Good day, everyone. I welcome you to the OSPA Thought Leadership webinar for today. My name is Mark Schreiber. I am guest hosting on behalf of Martin Gill, so I hope to be able to fill his big shoes and provide great value to you, your attendees, and your value in gathering information on this very specific topic. Today, we are specifically covering the question, have existing physical access control systems effectively supported COVID-19 and the return to office efforts? So we greatly appreciate you attending this and learning from our great number of panelists and their expertise on this very specific topic. Before we get in, we definitely want to thank our sponsor, IDEMIA, for providing the sponsorship for this and making this possible. IDEMIA is a provider of contactless biometric access control devices, and obviously those are seeing a greater rate of implementation due to the pandemic in order to provide for contactless access control. So we really thank them for sponsoring this program. As we always do, we have a great number of panelists who will be talking on this specific subject, and I, as the moderator, will go through multiple different questions on this topic throughout the program. So we have four great panelists here. We have Steve Bell from Gallagher. We have Francois Brouillet from Genetec, Andrew Fulton from Vanderbilt, and Eric Joseph from Linnell S2. Thank you all, gentlemen, for being on this call today in this webinar. Before we get started, I'd like to remind the attendees that you do have the ability to ask questions of the panel in the Q&A tool within this Zoom platform. So you open that up and you enter your questions, and then I will ask those questions as they pop up and address the audience. We will now do a brief introduction from each of the panelists, and we ask them to do a very quick introduction on themselves, their company, and their role. We'll go in alphabetical order to give everyone a fair shake. First off would be Steve Bell. Steve, if you will introduce yourself, please.
Yeah, hi, Mark and everybody. My name's Steve Bell. I'm Chief Technology Officer at Gallagher Security. I've been in physical security for a very long time and through many generations of our product. And yeah, we're based out in New Zealand, but a global company.
Thank you, Steve. Francois, would you introduce yourself, please?
Yes, hi, Mark. My name is Francois Brouillet. I'm the Product Line Manager for Access Control at Genetec. Genetec being a company that provides overall solution for physical access, so video access control. And I'm happy to be part of that panel.
Thank you, Francois. Andrew, would you introduce yourself, please?
Hi, my name's Andrew Fulton. I'm work for Business Development Director for Vanderbilt International here in Dublin. I started in the industry 30 years ago. I created a company called CEM Systems, sold that to Software House, and stayed with Tyco for 14 years. I came into Vanderbilt in 2017 as in charge of access control products, and I now work in business development.
Thank you, Andrew. And Eric, would you please introduce yourself?
Thank you, Mark. Good morning. Eric Joseph with Linnell S2. I'm a Director of Business Development, predominantly working with architects, engineers, consultants, and end users. Been with Linnell S2 for the past 16 years. Linnell S2 is a global leader in security management products. Some products we offer you may be familiar with include OnGuard, NetBox, and Blue Diamond. And just wanted to thank you, Mark, and thank the OSPA team for hosting us on this great panel.
Thank you, Eric. So as we delve into this very specific subject for today's webinar, physical access control systems are really foundational for most security operations in many corporate environments and other types of organizational environments. And they've been very valuable in supporting regular security operations. But during this pandemic and the impact of COVID-19, we've seen access control systems performing additional roles as well as their foundational roles. And so we really want to delve into that and learn what experience these many different companies have seen supporting thousands of end users across the globe, as we've got such a great global audience here, as well as the number of representations from the panel of many countries and many geographical locations. So what we want to start with is an opening statement addressing this specific topic of using access control during this pandemic, what would you like the audience to know about your specific experience from your role in your company? We'll start again alphabetically with Steve. Steve, please.
Yeah, hi. So the COVID-19 inquiries we receive from our customers actually have fitted into two main categories. The first is how might we minimize contact between people? And there's a number of areas to that. One is that touching stuff is not so popular anymore, and so we've got a data center company in the US that have fingerprint readers, and they've actually started replacing their fingerprint readers with the Morpho Wave compact readers, and they're totally contactless, and they're actually the product of our sponsor for this webinar. A second one we've seen that customers are looking at is moving from physical cards to mobile phone credentials, and there's some advantages in that. And one of the places that shows through is with where they need two-factor authentication, and where you can have a good two-factor authentication on a phone. You don't have to touch a keypad. There's a bunch of others. A lot of companies are looking to find out and limit the number of people in a work area so that they can keep their distance. And most access control systems have a zone count or a people count or an area count feature, and that can be used to trigger either an alarm so someone can sort it out, or it can actually sort of lock down the area for further entries. The second category we've seen people inquire about is how might we trace all the contacts of a staff member that gets a positive COVID test result. With that, we have a customer in Melbourne, Australia that is in a hot desking environment. They had a staff member test positive, and the result was that they had to shut down that area or the office for a number of days before they could, because they couldn't answer the question of where had that person been sitting and who had they been sitting near, and that shutdown was a big cost to them. They actually found a solution with a feature that we have in our system. They repurposed a parking lot or car park management feature that we have that is part of our system that manages the allocation of car parks, and or for this particular use, it was to manage the allocation of hot desks through a card reader. So when they arrive at work in the morning, they badge the card at the reader, and the system will allocate a desk to them. They then get shown that on the screen of the reader and use that desk for the day. The system behind the scenes keeps track of the history of which desk everyone is at on which day, and all those allocations. And from that, if another positive COVID test result comes through, they can go through and check out where they're sitting and who they're sitting near, and limit the number of people that need to be isolated, and also that stop the disruption to business and save some cost. We also have done, back in April, we did our R&D team developed and released a contact tracing report, and we've got a good number of customers using that. So that report will look at the audit trail of access granted events, and so if a COVID positive event occurs, they can enter that person into the report, and the report will run and show all the contacts in various locations over a period of days, and they get the location of contact, they get the duration, and so they can assess which people are the ones that need to be sent home and isolated, and also the work areas that need to be cleaned are pretty evident. The one thing that some of our customers have done to increase the resolution of that is to actually add exit readers to their doors, so that they can get a badge in and a badge out scenario happening, and that improves the accuracy. It can improve the accuracy of the times, contact times, and things like that, and lead to fewer people being isolated again, and maybe allowing the work environment to have more people brought back into the office. Thanks, Mark.
Thank you, Steve. A lot of great solutions there that you covered. Next up would be Francois. Francois, could you address the same question with your opening statement?
Sure. So what we noticed is, even before the pandemic, we were already noticing that end customers were looking to do more with their actual system. They wanted to leverage the technology they had and make sure they could make the most of it. So they wanted to improve their business efficiencies. So, I mean, in access control systems, some are designed to be working in silos and very dedicated to protect the perimeters, but there's a lot more that can be done actually with those systems. So I think the pandemic accelerated that trend of using the system beyond just the physical, the doors. And this is how we had customers using our access control system for managing the use of personal protection equipment. So to make sure that everyone would have enough equipment and wouldn't be consuming more than they should. Making sure also that if somebody was tested positive with COVID-19, that we could quickly identify the other people that were in contact or close proximity with them. So I'm using a report that we have in our system. So different, really the challenges was how to properly manage the work, the flow of people throughout the facilities or the buildings, and ensuring the security of those employees on site. Some of the issues that we've seen also from end customers that were not necessarily prepared, didn't have the right solution, the right system, was the challenge to quickly adapt to those changes. So how do you go from basically allowing everyone to have access to all the areas, because throughout the years you've been granting this person to access an area and then you forgot about his access level. How do you structurally change how people have access very quickly and within the stressful moment? So with a good system, it should be possible to be proactive and change the way your system is working for you in a timely fashion without having to redesign the whole solution over again. Thanks, Mark.
Thank you, Francois. Excellent points. Next up is Andrew. Andrew, if you'll make your opening statement, please.
Well, I guess whenever the COVID thing happened, we sort of realized that we needed to do a bit of software development quite quickly. And like the rest of the guys, we did these COVID reports that everybody wanted. Some of the nice things were on our cloud-based product, we were able to roll them out overnight. So everyone had the reports within a couple of days. So that was good. But we saw a lot of things that people want to do differently. Visitor management has become much more important, and people like the idea of fast issuing QR codes to people so that they can get into the reception area. They don't even let them come into the reception area if they don't have a QR code and an appointment book. We saw things like facial readers become more prevalent, and ones with temperature control. I mean, we're using them ourselves, and you know, we're quite successful with how they're deployed. People do like low-cost facial readers now because they're trying to get rid of keypad readers. We're definitely seeing those going down, and we're seeing fingerprint reader sales going down. But as we were saying earlier on, occupancy control has become important, and we've got retail customers coming to us and said, you know, can you do counting to light a green light when we can have more customers walk in? So we've seen lots of different things. I mean, certainly people don't want to touch anything. And if you can do remote diagnostics on the system, and you know, the cloud systems are definitely becoming a little more popular because they can do a lot more remote diagnostics. As I say, physically on doors, Steve made a good point about putting exit readers, and we're seeing that come in. We're also seeing a dramatic change towards hands-free exit buttons. A lot of people are getting rid of the old exit buttons and putting hands-free. And we talk about where's access control going to go in the future. And I think, you know, access control has been mainly about, can a person be let in? Hopefully with a safe credential, but you know, we've spent so many years trying to get people off prox cards. It's good to have another reason to make them go to something like Bluetooth. But are they safe to be let in starts to become the question. You know, the temperature check, okay, it's only skin temperature, but it's better than nothing. Is a zone capable of taking more people? Can they be socially distanced? Are there already too many people in there? Are the hot desks too full? Do we want to close that down? Are they expected to be coming in? And one of the things that's happened here in Northern Ireland, just in the last few days, they've started shutting people down by postcodes. So we've had a customer ask us immediately, can they key in the postcodes to the system? Because they already store the postcode that somebody lives at. And then the system automatically will deny access if someone is in one of the banned postcodes. So it's interesting to see where, where things are going to go. Definitely more hands-free, definitely better visitor management control, and the ability to go from being in the old orange status or red status or green status, depending how the COVID is going, and being able to change the dynamic of how access control is used is going to be important.
Excellent. Thank you, Andrew. And Eric, if you'll make your opening statement, please.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mark. I think saying this pandemic is unprecedented might even be not giving it enough credit or verboseness. This is something that was totally unique. And I think back to how quickly things really shifted and changed. Personally, I was traveling the middle of March when the States really was affected by the pandemic. And I was driving down to Florida, which is an 8-hour trip for us. With my 5-month-old son, it was a 12-hour trip on Saturday for an extended week-long vacation. And then Monday morning, when things, really started to change, we decided, my wife and I, to turn around and make that 12-hour trip again, which was obviously a lot of fun. But the thing I look back on is Saturday driving down, stopping a lot at restaurants and gas stations, and everything was normal. And then Monday, when we turned around, it was totally different. And that's what I'll always remember. And I think about that as it applies to our business, right? On Friday, we had employees coming in. The following Monday, everything was shut down. And that was what our customers were experiencing as well. Quickly pivoting, quickly moving to a new normal. And when that happens, really, you take stock of what you have currently as technology, and then you start looking at new technologies that you can apply to that existing infrastructure. And for as long as I've been doing this, I've been with OneLS2 for almost 16 years now. We've always said that access control systems are probably used maybe 10% of their functionality and capabilities. And I think this pandemic has really given security directors, security managers an opportunity to look at their systems and try to get even more out of them. Whether if that's looking at touchless experiences, we've seen a lot of interest in utilizing mobile credentials as well as facial and other touchless experience biometrics. Whether that's adjusting access control permissions and privileges. We've seen instances where at a building where traditionally you'd have 5 entrances, now everyone has to go through one entrance and their access rights are not even turned on until they've gone through that front entrance and gone through some sort of screening. We've also seen people look at utilizing a variety of different types of pre-screening, whether that's temperature screening, utilizing cameras and some biometric technologies, as well as pre-arrival questionnaires. So that's something we augmented and added into our portfolio, is the ability to have a pre-screening questionnaire that you answer before you are provided access into the facility. So utilizing all these new technologies, but more importantly, building them on a foundation you already have. So we see the fact that our systems utilize open architecture, being quickly and easily able to adopt to integrating new technologies that people may not even looked at before the middle of March, and now we're quickly trying to adapt. And that's something we've seen on the security side as well. And the other thing, we have a large property manager in New York City, has multiple buildings, multiple high-rise buildings. And within the first 2 or 3 weeks, I got a call from their security lead, a gentleman named Jack, who I've known for over almost 10 years at this point, someone who's used our system day in and day out. And what I realized and what he was asking me for were reports and data aggregation that already existed in the access control system, but they just never had to pull that information in the way they needed it. So for example, in this instance, these large multi-tenant buildings in Manhattan, they wanted a list of, by company, how many different people had come in over the past 2 weeks. They didn't want every access control transaction. They wanted to know, for company 1, we had 2 people come in, company 5, 10 people. And it's a reporting capability that we actually have in the system utilizing one of our report wizards, but it's just something people had never utilized before. So really looking at what you already have in place with these access control systems, they have thousands of features and usually only a few of them are being utilized. So taking what you have, really kind of enhancing that to get you solutions for this constantly changing problem that, you know, happened what feels like almost overnight. We went from 0 to 100 incredibly quickly.
Thank you, Eric. Great statements from all of our panelists showing this huge variety of using existing access control capabilities that they're, you know, the end users, organizations may have not known they already had the ability, as well as to adopting changing environments, changing data, rate reporting, and new technologies. So very great statements there. So I'll start with a specific question for Francois. So with all of these solutions and capabilities that are available, where have you heard end users finding the most value in this changing environment from the access control system? When you give them so many different solutions and capabilities that they can use during this pandemic, where have they come back to Genetec and said, this really changed our game and really made it possible for us to operate or reopen?
Well, I think the technology itself is not necessarily the answer for, like it's not a silver bullet. It's always a matter of being able to use different workflows or procedure to achieve the end goal. So with the unified platform, what our end customers were able to achieve is getting all the information from the different data point that they have through the solution and take the right decision. The other key element was to be quickly changing the behavior of the system. I was talking about earlier, going from basically all open access to a more restrictive control of who should have access to specific areas through the use of temporary rules and things like that. So I think it's the ability to quickly change the behavior of your system at a moment notice and being able to plan that ahead of time as well. Like it shouldn't be a thing that is thought of at the exact moment when the situation arrives. It needs to be, you need to be able to plan out those scenarios beforehand, even if no one could thought of the pandemic will be, things would have happened like that with it during the pandemic.
Thank you very much, Francois. So the agility of the systems foundationally is very valuable. Excellent. I will remind the audience, if you do have a question, please use the Q&A tool and enter your questions there, and we will address them as we go through. So the next question is for Eric Joseph. Eric, with these access control capabilities, would you say that the access control systems themselves are truly meeting the expectations for your users, or do they have, you know, expectations that are beyond the capability of current technologies and systems?
Yeah, I mean, I think talking to the customers we've been talking to, the partners we've been talking to, I think people have very realistic expectations in the sense of this isn't going to solve all their problems, right? If we look at what security systems do holistically and traditionally, it's all about mitigating risk, minimizing risk, and containing it as much as possible. And that's really what we're looking at providing here, whether that's utilizing adjustments to access control features, such as setting up occupancy limits, or forcing people to go in through certain entrances and screening them before they arrive so that you are minimizing and mitigating any risk for the other employees. Utilizing reporting, we have some proximity reports that can be utilized as part of contact tracing. So again, it's all about minimizing and mitigating the risks and the potential health risks, which is exactly what we've done for years on the security side. We've just kind of pivoted that to a health side and really maintain the health of our employees and the customers in the different facilities.
Thank you, Eric. So our next question is for Steve Bell. Steve, this comes from one of the attendees, Mr. Michael Gips, who actually has been a panelist before. And because you had specifically talked about biometrics and touchless access control, his question is, what's the point of touchless access control if you still have to touch the door handle? Options like foot pedals, optical turnstiles, et cetera, are too clumsy or expensive, and automatically opening doors are too insecure or even dangerous. What would you say to Michael about this question?
Look, I think the whole thing about this is that it's the number of people in areas. So a very public area, such as the entrance to a building, you know, have got hundreds or thousands of people going through each day. So you want to keep that ability to transfer anything down to an absolute minimum there. So, you know, if you're doing a biometric, and that should definitely be contactless at the turnstile, so that you know, you're keeping it down. When you're in a smaller scenario and you get down to the point where there's only the staff members of the appropriate company or a smaller group of people there, then maybe touching doors and therefore touching readers might not be such a bad thing. But it's really just that quantity of things where it's a small subset of people that know each other, trust each other, then they're probably you know, reasonably happy to touch the door. But really in the big public areas, you've got to keep the amount of potential ways of passing, you know, the disease between people down to absolute minimum.
Thank you, Steve. So in other words, spend your money wisely and apply that automated features to the doors where you absolutely need to, and then within that acceptable risk, right?
Yeah,
very
absolutely.
good point. So next question is for Andrew. Andrew, you talked about development for your access control platform. What kind of custom solutions or development did you actually have to implement to specifically address this pandemic from your clients' needs or where you perceived value?
I think probably all of the manufacturers had to do a little bit of development to get that contamination report, you know, right and easy to use. I mean, our existing reports, you could do certain things, but they weren't the quickest way of doing a contamination report, which people typically want quickly. So that's where we did some development work, and to make it, you know, easy and robust. You know, the idea of being able to say, how many minutes either side of somebody going through a door are you interested in? Or, you know, are you interested in people who were within a certain area? And so those types of questions that were being asked, what we spent our time developing. I mean, like some of the guys have said, we used some of the features that we have in our system, occupancy counting. You know, people would use that for car parks. And now all of a sudden people were using it to count people in an area to see if they were overly busy. We have QR code readers on the system. And, you know, when we get into the cost side of things, people wanted a low cost way of not allowing visitors to even come into the lobby. And so they actually locked the front door where normally it opens freely. And people were saying, look, if you want to come in even to our lobby, you have to show your phone with the QR code reader to the door and it will let you in, because they didn't want random people coming in at all. So it's been interesting to see, you know, a bit of development, but quite a lot of redeployment of existing tools that are there.
Thank you, Andrew. And Francois, along the same lines, have you seen some challenges in trying to address customer solutions or just operating in this environment through your access control system that might be related specifically to the technologies and the operational use, but also might be related to just trying to service the customers in a good way?
I think there were actually at least three challenges that we noticed. First of all, is the ability for our customers to see all the options that are currently available, readily available in the solution. Today, if we're talking about like enterprise access control system, there's so many ways, so many things you can achieve with your system. Knowing them all could be a challenge for a customer. So sometimes they have the feature right at their right there, but they just don't know because they never happened to use it before. And I think that ties into a second challenge that we have seen is, or for the installer, for our system integrators that are out there installing it for those customers, well, they didn't necessarily had access to those sites as easily as before. So that it was even harder to provide like the close support that they would normally do just by stepping in and say, oh yeah, it's easy, you just do it like that. So that changed a bit the way service was provided to those customers. And then I just lost my train of thought for the third point. But yeah, the wealth of the features available in the solution and the way we're servicing customers have changed during the pandemic. And the third point I was going to mention is There is a lot of noise as well in terms of technology or how technology should be used for different application. So I've seen a lot of different attempts to on the market to address like combination of temperature with facial recognition and cameras, and I mean those are technically could be a good solution, but are they really effective in the field? I think we have to help our customers to make the difference between what could really be beneficial for them rather than just being a hype or just like an opportunities for certain manufacturers to create a solution that would not really be effective for our end users.
Thank you, Francois. So for our next question, we'll go to, oh, Eric, did you have a comment to make on Francois?
Yeah, no, I just want to kind of build on what Francois was saying, because I think, you know, we experienced something similar where, especially in March and April, there was a rush by customers to try to find all these new technologies. And it was definitely challenging trying to vet which technologies were quality, which technologies, you know, may not even meet what they're saying. So that's been a really big challenge that we've seen, is 10 or 15 or 20 new products basically appearing overnight that didn't even exist. And with companies that maybe we weren't as familiar with, and then, you know, trying to find the companies that we had relationships with, that we felt comfortable with them providing the technology and the solutions, and integrating those or expanding existing integrations that we could offer to customers. You know, one of the things I've realized is the questions I was getting in March and April are actually different than the questions I'm getting about products in September and in August, where I think originally people were just trying to rush to find something that they would feel comfortable helping them reopen, where now I think people are taking a little longer term view of, I want to find something that's going to help me today, but I also want to be able to continue to utilize that in the future. You know, at some point we will, as the world, get past this pandemic. And so if we're investing, you know, 5 figures, sometimes 6 figures that we weren't planning on investing January 1st, we want to make sure that that technology that we're acquiring is going to be useful in 2022, 2023 and beyond. So I think the asks have been different, where originally it was just, let me find something. Now people are taking a little more measured look of, let me find some technology that's going to help me reopen, but also maybe help me grow my security system and my security infrastructure into the future.
Thank you, Eric. Great point. Is, you know, the time frame for the impact of this pandemic has extended beyond most people's beliefs. You know, there's definitely been a change in the thought of what investments and what planning needs to be done. So very good point. For our next question, this goes to Steve. It's from one of our attendees, Mr. Carl Haywood. Carl asks, would facial recognition or iris recognition be a viable option if you pre-validate an employee or client for access to a building? This would also help track and trace with the correct software, is a question mark, as well as with temperature control cameras. So since you talked specifically about different biometric technologies and such, how would you answer Carl's question?
Yeah, look, definitely any contactless biometric is going to be doing the job well. You know, the technologies generally, facial recognition is doing a good job of letting the right people in, and iris also. So yeah, contactless is good. And, you know, even before the pandemic came along, there was a trend towards contactless. You know, people over time have decided that they don't like touching fingerprint sensors and things like that. So it's an ongoing trend. I think it's just got a bit accelerated with the pandemic. Yeah, so those are all viable ways of achieving the same result for that.
Thank you, Steve. Go ahead.
I'd just like to go on a bit. I think, you know, just following up on some of the other comments, I think the big thing is that everything's very dynamic and changing fast. You know, the compliance from federal and local governments that different customers are seeing in different areas are all a little bit different. They've all got their slightly different targets, and, you know, some of our universities have had to go from, they have a philosophy of a totally open campus, and, you know, now they're into the totally locked down campus, and, you know, still wanting to get that great experience, student experience, because, you know, the university market is very competitive. So it's quite a different area. So, you know, they are looking at that need to be able to update all the different access privileges of all their students, maybe even once a day, and to be able to let different groups of students on the campus. So there's a lot of change being asked for by the customers of the system, and that requires really good integrations into the back end system. So I think I guess I just wanted to get that point across rather than just biometrics, but yeah, cool.
No, excellent point there, Steve, and definitely important to understand it's not necessarily just a risk-based decision. We're dealing with changing governance, and compliance requirements. So excellent point. So Andrew, I think, did you have another comment on this?
Yeah, I mean, I think the real world is, we've done quite a bit of work of integrating other products into our product. A lot of facial readers have come on the market with thermal detection. And I mean, we've been quite pleased with, we use ZK Techo as an example. It's low cost, and we have it in our own office, and it works generally quite well. Yes, you have to figure out the distance you need to be from the device to get a quicker read. Yes, if you have a beard, it can detect that you've got a face mask on. But these systems are definitely helping, and we're selling quite a lot of them. So people are investing in this area, and if nothing else, it is giving everyone a thought that the company is caring. And of course, you can get into all the technical debates about skin temperature and face temperature and picking the temperature from the corner of the eye. There's a lot of technology in here. But in general, I am seeing people have some success with these devices.
Thank you, Andrew. And so building on that same approach, I'll bring it to Francois with one of the attendees' questions. As you touched also on the temperature control system, temperature screening, Conrad Viner asks, how can one use access control to limit the human interface to temperature screening prior to entering a premises? Have you dealt with that, Francois, and how would you answer Conrad's question?
Yeah, actually, I think we need to be cautious with the use of temperature measurement, specifically when we talk about skin, not because the technology is not viable, but just, again, it depends what we do with that. Like, I would be really uncomfortable just denying the access simply based on the temperature. I think it needs to be part of the overall procedure. Now, you won't know beforehand if the person has temperature or not, but the same way as you have people that won't have any symptoms. So the scanner or the temperature measurement won't necessarily return a good value. So regardless of the technology that you're using, overall, you need to be able to minimize the risk for all the employees, because having temperature and being able to screen that beforehand is just one of the things that can be put in place to properly protect your employees or visitors.
Thank you very much, Francois. So I will tackle this next question from Gary Seals, and I'll handle this one over to Steve. Jerry asks, as businesses reawaken from lockdown, the reality is that many will return to their legacy or existing security systems and at the same time have far tighter budgets. Times are tight and remain uncertain. Do you think that the cost benefit argument for security could really change? Or would you pitch differently about access control to the executive team? How would you like to answer this high level question of the value of access control, Steve?
Look, I think most businesses are going to work out that the access control system is way more valuable than they may have thought in the past. So it's not just security; it's actually that ability to have some tools that can manage the compliance that they need to do. Now, after the pandemic's gone, there's still other compliances that they may have had on their horizon, for that they needed to do that maybe they didn't have a way to manage, but that the tools they put in for the pandemic actually gives them those tools to manage the compliance. So, different industries have different sets of compliance, and there's some extreme industries like mining where safety's there, and there's a whole lot of features going for that, like drug and alcohol testing and random selection of people for that sort of testing. You know, maybe more of these things as the pandemic carries on and you know, tails off, that'll get used. You know, there's areas like that the ongoing need will still be there, and I think in the team of IT systems that any business has, the access control one's going to be right up there and very important.
Thank you, Steve. And Eric, you have a comment on this?
Yeah, I mean, I think the idea of value with access control systems being enhanced following the pandemic is definitely true. I mean, traditionally in some circles, access control and security systems were viewed more as a cost center. And when you can come back to your executive leadership and show all the capabilities you're able to utilize with the access control system that you already invested in, and with minimal additional investment, I think that's huge. And going forward, I think people are realizing how critical it is to have the information that access control systems provide to allow for a healthy return to work. LS2 is part of Carrier. You may be familiar with Carrier from their HVAC and refrigeration and fire and safety businesses. So Carrier is really looking at this as an initiative to kind of adjust a little bit from the intelligent building to now the healthy building. And access control and security systems are incredibly important to that. You know, we've always looked at access control systems as kind of the, almost like the nervous center of an intelligent and now a healthy building because of all the data it provides. And if you can kind of show where utilizing that data of these systems that you have to have anyway for security purposes, but are allowing people to get back to work in a safe manner and a healthy manner, you know, that's incredibly important and incredibly valuable.
Thank you, Eric. And I have one question for Andrew as we start to wrap this up. Andrew, there's been discussion specifically about the screening and specifically the attestation of employees as they're returning to the office. And this really drives also specifically with existing visitor management systems. So in regards to the use of attestation and visitor management during this pandemic, have you seen some challenges in trying to implement that from your perspective?
I think, you know, being very honest about it, we took visitor management as being a simplistic task as a bolt-on to access control. And, you know, when you get into all of the depths of a visitor management in a very busy hospital, you quickly realize that there maybe integration to some specific visitor management software platforms is a better option. And we've been doing quite a bit of that at the moment. We've been doing a number of interfaces to visitor management platforms and using their specialist skills to help it in that area, as the tools that we have in our standard access control platform just weren't good enough.
Thank you very much, Andrew. Yes, definitely a challenge in changing environment. So as we are getting near the end of this time, I'd like to say that we have a great deal of questions that came in from the audience. We'll definitely try and address those. I think I can speak on behalf of the panel. Feel free to reach out to any of us with any of these specific questions that you may have, whether you have direct emails or connect to us on LinkedIn or other platforms or means. Feel free to reach out to us. I'm sure we will get back to you with other means we have. So we'd like to always wrap up with a very brief closing statement on this topic from each of the panelists. So I'll ask each of the panelists to spend about 10 to 30 seconds on what you really want the audience to take away from what we've talked about today in your role, starting alphabetically with Steve. Please, Steve, if you'll go ahead and make your closing statement.
Yeah, so it's been really interesting in the pandemic that we've all got used to doing things differently, and you know, we got used to online meetings, and that's becoming the general flavor of how we do things. So I think with access control, it's going to be the different coming out of this too. So we're all getting used to having the doors all secure all the time and having to use our card or phone to get through the door every time. So I think people will be different at the end of it, and the business will be different. And as we mentioned just before, I think the access control system's going to be one of the key systems for managing risk and guaranteeing as much safety as people can for their staff in a business. So it's a critical system.
Thank you, Steve.
And Gallagher, we're very committed to working with our customers to achieve all these things. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Francois, if you'll make your closing statement, please.
Sure. I think the access control business and the security business overall is changing more quickly than it was in the past. And there will be new technologies, we'll face new challenges. Making sure that our end customers have the right solution to quickly adapt to those situation is certainly a key. But I would invite also those end customers to consider their system not just being a way to secure their physical perimeter, but really look beyond the door and see the full potential that their security system can provide them.
Thank you very much, Francois. Andrew, if you'll share your closing statement with us, please.
I think that, people are, as Francois said, people are using the system for many other things nowadays. Simply, you can put a couple of light beams on a door and wire it into your inputs on your existing access control system and count the people that are in the building and light a red light when it's too many people there. Simple to do. You don't have to spend much money and it'll give you a decent function. But let's not forget, sometimes you'll find that crime may well go up. You may need to be more secure than you have been before. And things that, that were important last year are still important. If someone can copy your card and clone it in 2 seconds, it's going to be easier to do that going forward and people will want to do it. So we have to remember, you've got to be secure as well.
Thank you very much, Andrew. I'll circle back to Eric. Eric, if you'll make your closing statement, please.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mark. I look at this and, I think a few years ahead and, we're 2024, 2025, are we going to look back on this pandemic as an inflection point that really adjusted some aspects of access control? For years, we've been talking about moving away from physical credentials. Are we going to look back and say the pandemic is really what helped escalate and make that adjustment to mobile credentials, to touchless biometrics? So are we really going to see it change, or are things going to kind of go back to normal? I think that's going to be really interesting. And then the other big thing is, what are our users' businesses going to look like as we come out of the pandemic? You see people, especially in the United States, starting to kind of move away from cities, move to other areas where maybe instead of having a lot of one large corporate campus, they're going to have a lot of smaller offices that may be a little more light, a little more nimble. And kind of what does that look like? And does it lend itself more to a cloud access control product because of the flexibility and the nimbleness of what those new offices are going to look like? So I'm very intrigued to see about that, and hope we look at this as an instance where we kind of elevated and expedited some enhancements to the security industry and kind of maybe have a few positives out of what has been a really tough time for everyone.
Thank you very much, Eric. Well, I'd like to thank all of the panelists for the very insightful points made. I would like to especially thank IDEMIA for sponsoring and making this program possible. And also really want to thank the attendees for taking time out of their day to learn more about access control during these changing and challenging times. I would like to identify that the OSPAs is a very great organization that has multiple awards that they like to deliver across the globe. As you can see listed today, there are multiple nominations are currently available. So if you are in the countries of the UK, Romania, or Germany, definitely consider nominating someone worthy of those awards. And if you are in the US, next week there will be a big award ceremony for the United States OSPA award winners. Kenya will be announced coming up in a few months, and Benelux award ceremonies will take place on November 24th. So take advantage of those recognitions and congratulate the winners. We have several OSPA webinars coming up. Next week, there will be 2 that will be starting at an earlier time than normal at 9 o'clock British Standard Time, and then back to the regular schedule the following week. As the guest host filling in Martin Gill's big shoes, it's been an honor to be here and support this effort. I'm very happy with the great conversations that we had, and I hope everyone does well. Thank you and be safe.